Welcome to the 5150 style guitar methods. I'm Mutz Marsh, the Eddie Van Halen geek. In this channel, I explain how I understand and apply the Eddie Van Halen technique. My guitar brain is 95% Eddie Van Halen. That's why I call my guitar style the 5150 style, after Eddie. I have an overwhelming number of research notes on Eddie Van Halen on the shelves in my room. It's safe to say that these notes represent my deep love for Eddie Van Halen. My role here is to turn all of that into videos and share them with the world. My attempt is to stock the playing techniques I've learned from Eddie so that I can draw from them and use them as my own phrases at any time. There are no tutorials here to help you play Van Halen's songs. This is a method for building improvisation that only I can do worldwide. I'm not sure if this will be of any help to everyone, but I would be happy if you could watch it, just to pass the time. Everyone, stay tuned. In the previous number 17, we discussed how to control the intensity of the blues feeling by mixing elements of the G major pentatonic and G minor pentatonic scales, using a phrase from Nicolette Larson's Can't Get Away From You as an example. Once again, we'll talk about phrases that use both the major and minor pentatonic scales simultaneously, but this time, the focus is not on controlling the intensity of the blues feeling. Eddie combined the major and minor pentatonic scales in a completely unique way, creating a brand new blues scale. The melodies produced from this scale are unlike any standard blues phrases before. They are exclusively Eddie's blues phrases. These melodies are the most aggressive, the most Eddie-like, and are built in the simplest way possible. Since it combines both the major and minor pentatonic scales, I call this scale the double pentatonic. Today I'd like to talk about this scale. Before explaining, let me first show you what a phrase using the double pentatonic sounds like. There is a moment where Eddie plays a double pentatonic lick in a G blues, so listen to it. What do you think? Did you get a feel for the phrase? If it was too quick to catch, try listening at a slower speed. As you may have noticed, the phrase I played at the beginning of the video is almost an exact reproduction of this audio performance. Since the key of G was also used in parts of Nicolette Larson's Can't Get Away From You, I chose an example played in the key of G for this explanation. By the way, all the Eddie video samples at the beginning are in the key of A. That was the only footage I could find. In other words, he mostly played in A, and G is quite rare. Like in Can't Get Away From You by Nicolette Larson, Eddie was skilled at moving between the major and minor pentatonic positions, or mixing both scales without changing positions. This is a standard blues approach. However, Eddie wasn't satisfied with standard blues approaches. He developed his own interpretation, creating a unique blues scale and phrases. That is what we call the double pentatonic, which we are introducing today. The melodies derived from the double pentatonic may be difficult for some listeners to accept. Of course I love it, but one thing is for sure, It's nothing like what Eric Clapton or Stevie Ray Vaughan would play. First, let's look at a diagram comparing the major and minor pentatonic scales. In this case, the tonic is G on the 15th fret. The red dots represent the G major pentatonic scale, while the black dots indicate the G minor pentatonic scale. Dots that are half red and half black represent notes that are shared by both scales. Looking at this pattern as a whole, you'll notice that the notes are concentrated around the 12th, 15th and 18th frets. At the 12th and 15th frets, all 6 strings are completely filled with notes. Now, here's where things get interesting. Eddie must have thought, if that's the case, why not fill up the 18th fret with notes too? And that's how this new pattern was created. He removed all the notes outside of the 12th, 15th and 18th frets. Instead, he borrowed some notes from elsewhere to complete the gaps in the 18th fret. This is Eddie's double pentatonic form. Just looking at it, you can tell it has Eddie's signature style. Now let's go back to the original structure and analyze the note composition in more detail. When we remove the shared notes, the combined major and minor pentatonic scales consist of 8 distinct notes. In terms of scale degrees, these notes are the root, 2nd, minor 3rd, major 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and minor 7th. Of course, blues players use additional notes beyond these. Not just in blues, but also in other styles, players often incorporate the flat 5th and passing chromatic notes to connect phrases. Taking those into account, we can see that all 12 notes of the chromatic scale are potentially usable, something we've discussed before. The skill of a musician lies in how they combine these 12 notes and express different musical flavors. So, does that mean you can play any note anywhere without restriction? Not quite. This is an important point. In blues, the foundation of phrasing still relies on the major and minor pentatonic scales. That means it's crucial to position your notes properly in relation to the key and chords. Next, let's take a closer look at the notes in the double pentatonic scale. Analyzing it in detail may not be very meaningful, but for comparison purposes, let's break it down. Surprisingly, the double pentatonic scale contains as many as 11 notes. It includes all notes except for the major 7th. It's a unique idea that prioritizes fingering, making it the same across all strings from the 6th to the 1st. Though it may seem like a playful experiment, no other scale covers 11 notes using a 3 notes per string form. However, when you think about it, this structure makes a lot of sense. That's because all 12 notes are accessible, and the major and minor pentatonics serve as the core of the phrases, just like in a blues approach. However, there is a trick to using this scale effectively. Eddie always plays this scale at high speed. By the time you realize he started playing something, the phrase is already wrapping up. Whether in slow blues or fast boogie, he plays at nearly the same speed. This suggests that Eddie prioritizes playing freely at high speed, transcending tempo and beats. But why does he do this? It's because the scale contains many outside notes. When dealing with outside notes, the key is not to sustain them for too long. Playing them quickly and smoothly makes their outside nature less noticeable. At the same time, it's important not to let the phrase sound too predictable. The idea is to create a thrilling effect where the listener senses something unusual, yet it doesn't sound outright dissonant. That's the true purpose of using outside notes. Music always needs a fine balance between inside and outside notes. This scale naturally embodies that balance. Phrases using this scale generally follow the shape shown in the examples. For the ascending part, each unit consists of 3 notes. The first note is played with a down pick, followed by 2 hammer-ons. After finishing the previous phrase, take a short breath and then rush up the scale at full speed. In the sample audio, the ascending run starts on the 5th string, but you can achieve a similar feel by starting from the 4th, 3rd or 2nd strings. If you have enough time, you can also start from the 6th string. After reaching the top, the phrase makes a turn. Here I will explain the EVH Turn2. For comparison, let's first review EVH Turn1. For the turn section, think of it as a 6-note unit. In other words, one unit consists of 3 notes on the second string and 3 notes on the first string. Assign numbers 1 to 6 to these 6 notes in ascending order. In EVH Turn1, you ascend through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then step back 1 note before turning down as 5, 6, 5, 4, 3. In contrast, EVH Turn2 skips note 5 after playing 2, 3, 4 and jumps straight to 6, then moves down as 6, 5, 4, 3. Eddie actually uses both variations, likely choosing them on the fly based on the feel of the phrase. Personally, I find EVH Turn2 easier to execute. However, when transitioning from a Spanish fly-style phrase that shifts along the first and second strings, EVH Turn1 may feel more natural. Since this section involves more vertical movement, let's focus on practicing EVH Turn2 for now. After completing the turn, move immediately into the 1-3-1 move. Let's also review the 1-3-1 move with a tab diagram. First, play 1 note with an uppick. Next, play 3 notes using a downpick followed by 2 pull-offs. Finally, play 1 note on the 3rd string with a down pick. This completes the 1-3-1 move. Pay close attention to the transition from the last 1 back to the first 1, as this is a common point where mistakes occur. Practice this thoroughly. In most cases, you repeat the 1-3-1 move twice, then play the 1-3 move once, before concluding in a major pentatonic position. There are many ways to conclude a phrase, but it's helpful to remember the examples given here as standard approaches. Personally, I like to use the 14th fret on the 4th string for a more major flavor, but Eddie often uses the 15th fret, which leans slightly more toward a minor feel. You can switch between them depending on your preference. When playing major pentatonic phrases, it's helpful to focus on the tonic note positioned under your index finger. In this case, the tonic is on the 12th fret of the 3rd string. By centering your index finger here and adding notes around it, you can create phrases that clearly reflect the major pentatonic sound. Keep this in mind when crafting your ending phrases. In this lesson, we explored how to practically use Eddie's unique double pentatonic scale, covering the following topics: the fundamental blues approach, an expanded interpretation of blues and the scale's structure, handling outside notes, EVH Turn2, 1-3-1 and 1-3 moves, the tonic note and index finger positioning in the major pentatonic. That about sums it up. Review and practice often.
Yes, that's all for this issue. How did it go? If you like it, please give us a high rating and subscribe to my channel. High ratings and channel subscriptions are my best motivation. Best regards. I will continue to upload useful information for rock guitarists, so don't miss it. Again, what I show in the 5150 style video is just an example of how I understand and utilize the Eddie Van Halen technique. There are 10 different interpretations of the technique for every 10 people, so it's up to you how you use what you learn. It may sound contradictory to say this when I am in the position of posting videos on YouTube, but to be clear, the most important part of music and guitar cannot be learned from YouTube videos. It is important to be willing to use your ears to learn and to be generous with your time. It is very important to feel the nuance and feeling with your ears. Even if it is wrong, it is very important to spend time thinking, how is it played? And try this and that, and it is very important to spend that time. There are no shortcuts. That is why I want you to spend as much time as you can with the notes. That's what I think. The watchword is keep on rocking, right? See you soon. Bye-bye.